What do you think billionaires do when they're just kicking back? The answer is most likely they get buzzed on alcohol as many regular 9-to-5ers do. The only difference is what they drink could end up costing more than you'll make in a lifetime because you're poor. Number 7. The most expensive beer. Beer. It's the go-to alcohol for many people in the world. That's why it's arguably the most social of drinks, and luckily it doesn't usually cost very much at all. In fact, you can get yourself a beer in the Czech Republic for about $1.50, which according to expat websites isn't much more than the folks over there pay for water. Some say beer runs like water in the Czech Republic, so not surprisingly this is the top country for beer consumption. On average, each person consumes around 190 liters of beer a year. Yeah, no other country even comes close to that. One thing we can say for sure is most of the people in that country would scoff at you if you offered them a beer costing $100. We actually found quite a lot of beers that go for that price, some of them with names we all know. Take for instance the well-known label called Samuel Adams. It has a special beer, its champagne of beers, called Samuel Adams Utopias. This is how the founder of the beer described these $200 beers. It's kind of like the Starship Enterprise of beer. It takes beer where no beer has been before. You're not supposed to chug it like some college students would do with their everyday beers, you're supposed to sip it. It has a 28% alcohol by volume, so knocking back a bottle in 5 seconds would give you quite the hit. That's expensive, but we found even more expensive beers. There's a beer called Tutankhamun Ale, which according to news reports was the creation of an Egyptologist. This guy apparently found residues of beer inside the Sun Temple of Nefertiti in Egypt and got to work on making a beer based on what those Egyptians made. If you don't know, beer drinking goes back as long as human history has been recorded. In fact, some people say beer was one reason for many advances in the world. It's always been important stuff. The English almost had a revolution when the government wanted to stop the textile workers from getting free ale during their mega hard work days. Beer is the boss and has been for thousands of years. Anyway, Tutankhamun Ale was going for £5,000 a bottle, which works out at around $7,000. But that was for the first bottle. It seems after that you could get one for a mere $70. Still, since so few were made, those that weren't snapped up were sold on later. In the US, some people paid $500 for a bottle. This is how one person reviewed it. Very interesting beer, to say the least. It was good, just different. I would say it's an experience worth going for. That's still not the most expensive beer ever sold. The record, we think, goes to a beer made by a Scottish brewery called Brewdog. They made a beer called The End of History. While some bottles went for just $1,000, the most expensive one ever sold went for $20,000. That's a lot for your average American. In fact, it would be like Jeff Bezos paying $2 billion for a beer. The End of History was a whopping 55% in volume, so it certainly wasn't the kind of thing you'd throw down your neck. What was so special about it? Well, inside the bottle was a taxidermy squirrel or hare. You also helped the brewery raise funds by buying one. Apparently, it contained flavors of Scottish nettles and juniper berries. We don't think the dead animal did much for the taste. And if that's your thing, head over to Cambodia or Thailand or Laos, and you can get some hooch containing a snake or a scorpion, which will set you back hardly anything, and allegedly make your John Thomas grow. Disclaimer: the infographic show does not espouse, condone, or recommend drinking strange brew containing dead animals. Number 6. Most expensive wine. Oh, glorious wine, the nectar of the gods, the apple of the eye of Dionysus, the drink that attracts some of the world's most pretentious people, folks willing to spend big and talk big about glorified grape juice. You might have heard people discussing Châteauneuf-du-Pape wines, which is actually just a region in the Rhône Valley of France. Wines from here don't come cheap, and so they've made it into jokes in popular culture. In the movie Anchorman 2, Ron Burgundy hit his head and said, "I drank half a bottle of ketchup thinking it was Châteauneuf-du-Pape." Yeah, this is one of the most renowned expensive wines. Still, if you go online, you can find you'll pick up a bottle for a mere $28. That's the cheap stuff. You can also find bottles for almost $1,500. This is still chump change for some wine lovers. We're not sure if you've heard the story, but a clever dude in the US duped people out of millions by selling them fake wine. One of the Koch brothers gave that guy $2 million for wines that weren't what they seemed. He was paying in the region of $50,000 to $100,000 for regular wines that came in fake bottles. Later, Koch had an auction in which he was offloading around 45,000 bottles of his precious wine, the good stuff, not the fakes. Just one of the bottles was expected to go for $120,000. That was a Rothschild 1945. Remember, that's still peanuts to a multi-billionaire. Put it this way, when Elon Musk was making stupid money in 2020 and 2021, he was adding $432 million to his net worth every day. What's a paltry $120,000 to people like that, or folks with many fewer billions? They could lose that much down the back of the sofa and they'd never know it was missing. After hearing that, you won't be too shocked to hear that in 2010, someone at an auction in Hong Kong paid $328,000 for a bottle of Chateau Lafite Rothschild. You can actually find these wines online going for just $70, but this was in 1869, apparently a good year and very rare. According to reports, most of the bidders were Chinese. At the time, this was the most expensive bottle of wine ever sold, but it got pipped in 2018. That was the year someone paid $558,000 for a bottle of 1945 Romanée-Conti. The buyer was an Asian wine collector. Just after he spent a small fortune on the bottle, an American buyer paid $496,000 for the same wine. This amounts to close to $100,000 for one solitary glass. Imagine knocking that over. That stain would be worth the same as a standard Porsche 911 Carrera. But this is what Bloomberg said about where the wine was grown. Of its 7 fabled reds and 1 white, those from the tiny 4.5-acre Romanée-Conti vineyard are absolutely iconic, the epitome of the highest quality Burgundy. Not long ago, someone said they'd poison all the vines on that land if the owner didn't give them over $1 million. They didn't get away with it. A 2009 version of this fabled wine will now set you back over $3,000 a bottle. Apparently, this is what you get for your money. Amazingly complex aromas, long, savory layers of earth and spice flavors, and a silky texture that transfixes your tongue. Now let's shake it up a bit. Number 5. Most expensive cider. Okay, so we just discussed the chosen drink of the high society milieu, the people that don't regularly mix with the sort of folks watching this video. Now let's get low down and dirty and discuss a drink that's more connected with the working people. A drink in the UK that comes in 3-liter bottles and is quaffed by what the press has called the impoverished, antisocial, underage, and as many Brits will tell you, the desperate. Hey, at just over £3 for a 3-liter bottle of 8.4% hooch, the stuff is an absolute bargain. But let's leave the likes of White Lightning and Frosty Jacks alone for now. We don't want anyone having a panic attack here. Let's instead focus on the ciders of the privileged class, where golden apples hang from luxurious trees. Actually, ciders, it seems, don't get that expensive. We went online window shopping and struggled to find any ciders worthy of the palate of a billionaire. Sure, you could get your hands on a bottle of Sea Cider Prohibition for $25, but that's hardly a massive step up from the stuff that boasts 50% off on the label. The French, of course, make a cider sound really expensive. Imagine telling your buddy you just cracked open your 3rd bottle of Frosty Jacks and he tells you, with an air of disgust, that he's about to quaff his first bottle of Éric Baudelaire Pelon Jus de Pommes Acides. Snob. He would have paid in the region of $18 for his drink. In your mind, you're a winner because after a bit of adding up, you worked out that you've effectively, percent-wise, gotten yourself a real bargain. A bottle of Cidre du Pont Reserve will cost you about $35. A bottle of Domaine de Cuvée Carpe Prestige, even though it sounds great, costs $25. Seems like that's about as much as an expensive cider will cost. So we'll leave it there for now and get to the most expensive kinds of booze you can buy that's not wine. Number 4. The most expensive rum. Some of you Philistines out there will spoil a good rum by adding cola to it, but we know a few of you rum aficionados would never defile a good drink by mixing it with an unknown chemical. You'd never consider doing that with a glass of Legacy by Angostura. This is a rum that comes from Trinidad and Tobago and will set you back around $35,000. Unlike wine, people aren't buying it because it's old. It's just said to be of really high quality, and if you bought a decanter of it, you'd be one of only 20 other people who were rich enough to buy one. If you wanted to buy some rum right now and not have to go to auction for it, you could spend just over $5,000 and pick up a bottle of Appleton Estate 50 Years Jamaican Independence Reserve. Quite a few online stores say it's sold out, but we found some places that have a couple bottles in stock. We think the winner for rum is the J. Wray & Nephew 1940s rum, or at least it's the winner in terms of what you can find online and buy now. This stuff in the past has gone for $50,000. The 25-year-old of its kind you can see for sale now at around $12,000. Some of the most expensive bottles ever sold were found in a stately house in the city of Leeds in northern England. The rum was bottled with a few others back in 1780. In 2014, they were all sold at auction for around $11,000 each. The guy who owned the house said this, "I'd always known the bottles were down there, but I wouldn't have given them another look." The man was already related to an earl and part of England's rich, so he gave the proceeds of the auction to charity. Okay, on to something even more expensive. Number 3. The world's most expensive cognac. Cognac's also one of those drinks you associate with the wealthy. It's the kind of thing you drink in the drawing room after dinner while smoking cigars and talking with bearded gentlemen about how you plan to do an arms deal with a dictator on the other side of the world. We went to a website, and as soon as it opened, a man in a serious voice said, "Dare to taste Remy Martin Black Pearl Louis XIII Cognac." And then he waffles on about becoming a master of time or something like that. They obviously hired one of those high-paid copywriters because instead of talking about what booze does, gets you sloppy, the website mentions sensibility and temporality. That kind of talk doesn't come cheap. A bottle of this stuff right now will cost you around $40,000. There's plenty of them too. Right now you can buy the Magnum version for almost $130,000, which makes this cognac an expensive tipple indeed. That's why it's the drink of choice for British arms dealers. Well, maybe it is. It's not the most expensive though. We found a bottle of Gaultier cognac that was made in 1762. At auction it went for $144,525,000. Now for something Russian arms dealers like to drink. Number 2. The most expensive vodka. Okay, so there is something called billionaire vodka. That's because it costs $3.7 million a bottle, and that's sure to elicit the starving kids around the world cliche. Who could seriously live with themselves for buying a bottle? Thing is, the reason it's so expensive is that it's not just the purest and softest vodka, but because when it was made, the water flowed over diamonds. Yeah, that's true. But the main reason it costs so much is that there are 3,000 diamonds studded into the bottle itself. There's another vodka called Royal Dragon Vodka that costs $5.5 million, but again, you're paying for diamond-studded packaging. That's kinda cheating. What about regular vodka? How much does that go for? There's Absolut's Crystal Pinstripe Black Bottle. It doesn't come with gold or diamonds or any certain kind of gems, but it is a crystal bottle. It costs just over $1,000. There's the Stoli Elite Himalayan Edition vodka, which has a nice packaging, but nothing too over the top. One of the reasons it's so expensive is the fact that it's made with Himalayan water. For $3,000 you apparently get a really smooth taste. It's the kind of stuff that rappers drink before getting into a fight. It looks as though that's the thing with expensive vodkas, it's mostly about the bling. If they're not covered in gems or made on the moon, they generally don't cost much. You could still buy some brands for $100 to $300, though that doesn't come in a special bottle. It's the same with tequila. The expensive stuff has a luxury package, so we're not going there again. Let's instead focus on arguably the most famous spirit of them all, a drink that doesn't require bling to make it ridiculously expensive. Number 1. The most expensive whiskey. The Scots have been making and drinking whiskey for quite some time, so you won't be surprised to hear that collectors pay large amounts for some of the older stuff. They don't have to be old to cost a lot though. Take, for instance, Octomore 10-year-old second edition. It costs $235. And then you've got the 2004 George T. Stagg Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey costing around $550. Someone commented on the latter saying it has a quality that defies belief. You're not paying for age here or diamonds, just quality. Then you've got Macallan's 1824 series, which despite the name doesn't have an age on the bottle. Those can go for around $900. Like wine drinkers, some whiskey drinkers take their hobby seriously. This is how one person described smelling that 1824 stuff. Buttery and creamy with grapefruit-tinged citrus notes providing background sharpness. On top of that comes layers of more traditional sherry notes, with milk chocolate, sugared raisins, and spiced apple. Still, the most expensive stuff has been aged a fair while. A bottle of Bowmore 1957 has an average price of $710,220. Right now, online you can buy a bottle of Bowmore Black Bowmore Finest Single Malt Scotch Whiskey for just over $40,000. A Springbank 1919 is just $78,000 a bottle, which is a similar price to many regular vintage whiskeys. As for the big guns, a Macallan 1926 from a certain cask went for over $2.6 million in 2019. It was called the Holy Grail of whiskeys. Not many people have tasted it. One guy that did taste it said, "It's a great whiskey, but I've had better." A bottle from the same batch had earlier sold for $1.2 million. From what we can see, if we're not talking about fancy bottles, these are the most expensive drinks in the world. Now you need to watch Most Expensive Things in the World, or have a look at this.